Thanks for logging on to NASCAR.com for this week's edition of the preview show delivered by FedEx Racing. Mark Fine alongside Mike Bell. Good to see you.
Good to see you, traveling man.
Yeah, back from Michigan, and we had a good race. It was a lot of fun. 3 wide, 4 wide sometimes. Mark Martin comes out the winner. I want to talk about Mark Martin, what this means for him, because all of a sudden, people thought it would be nice to see him with that Hendrick team and he'd be able to compete, but I think he may be competing for a championship.
When Mark Martin had the lead, remember when he was racing back in the day for the Ginn Racing team with that Army car, and he could have won the 500, and he was like leading the points a third of the way through the season, but he said, now I'm only going to race a couple more races this year, and he walked away, and fans are going, what are you doing? This could be your best chance for a championship since the 90s. Well, this year, I think a lot of folks, as you said, didn't really think this was going to work. Come on, Mark Martin coming back. Mark Martin not only could win this year, he could win a championship next year. He's got a great crew chief. He and Alan Gustafson are on the same page right now, and everything they do is just coming up roses. Look at the way they rolled the dice. Would have been happy with the third place finish. Greg Biffle and Jimmy Johnson outrace each other, and there it is for Mark Martin, a very popular victory on Sunday.
Yeah, and you mentioned Gustafson. After the race, Jeff Gordon said, Mark and Alan are just so tough to beat right now. And when Jeff Gordon's saying that, they're running good. All right, let's push forward to Sonoma. We are the preview show after all. I love this race. I like going to the road courses. The added excitement this year, of course, double file restarts, shootout style. It's going to be real interesting to see these cars line up and head to that start-finish line after the
I hope the NASCAR fans love it as much as we do. How do you get to a race? You make lefts and rights, and you shift sometimes. And you're up in wine country, too, so go get some grapes. But now you're right. With the double file restarts, it's so tight going through that front sort of start-finish complex at Sonoma. They've got that slow, sweeping number 11. We're going to see so much more action at this year's race in wine country than we've ever seen before. So I think fans will be very excited with TNT's coverage. Should be a dynamic race.
Thanks for the TNT plug there. Appreciate it. And let's talk about the course in terms of how it compares to the other road course, because when we head to one of these, we're always comparing it with the other one. What is the difference? What should people be watching?
To say that Sonoma is slower than Watkins Glen doesn't mean it's any less exciting, but Watkins Glen is a much higher speed track with some real sweeping turns. Sonoma, you do have some really slow turns, but that's great for passing. So you have the uphills. These are things these guys are really not used to. That's why you'll see those guys that come in, those road course specialists, will have a pretty good run. But I think you look at some of the guys we've come to expect here, like Jeff Gordon and Tony Stewart, and a couple of guys that used to race in Formula One, like Juan Pablo Montoya.
Right, and when we talk about this race, the other thing we talk about, Larry Mack, we work with him on the TNT shows, so he's got that calculator buzz. And 2 years ago, Juan Pablo won on fuel mileage, so that's going to be another big factor.
Yeah, I went to Florida State, so math was really tough for me. But when you're watching this race, why are they pitting like 8 laps into the race? Because they, as Larry said, start walking bajuards.
Right.
And at the same time, I use that voice. But they will start literally calculating backwards from early in the race, and you're saying, what's the strategy here to try to get the most out of it? When Juan Pablo won 2 years ago, no one thought he had the juice left in the tank, but he was able to get it home.
All right, you and I have to make some picks now. You mentioned a lot of the usual suspects. Kyle Busch swept the 2 races last year on the road courses. There are a lot of guys who are going to come in who are road course specialists. Of course, Jeff Gordon, unbelievable on road courses. That said, I'm going to go with Kyle Busch. I'm waiting for that team to turn things around. They have really struggled. I think this is an area where they can do it. And also, he's going to be on our pre-race show, NASCAR Live, tune in on TNT. So I'm going to go with Kyle.
And Kyle Busch, of course, winning both those races you said last year, sweeping it. You know what? I want to go with Juan Pablo because he ran top 10 at Michigan. Did you notice? He was running really good back there. I think Kevin Harvick's a guy you'd like to pick, but that season's kind of lost. You can't go with Jimmy Johnson, much to the chagrin of our producer, Jason, because he's terrible. This is like a house of horrors at Sonoma, next only to Bristol in Jimmy Johnson's mind. I'm going to roll the dice with Juan Pablo Montoya. Remember, this is Earnhardt Ganassi Racing. He's got a Chevy, and they seem to have things dialed in. Let's get Juan Pablo back in victory lane.
All right, great stuff as always. Thanks. And thank you for logging on to NASCAR.com for this week's edition of the preview show delivered by FedEx Racing. We'll see you again next week.